give people a chance to ask questions, make comments, and so whatever that takes, we want to make sure people have an opportunity. For those of you that have been here and seen what Shane has presented, he'll go through it quickly. But again, if you don't know, I'm Mayor Jeff Pilon, Councilmember Joel Greenberg, Councilmember Dan Bryan, City Clerk Treasurer Lori Strike, City Attorney Bob Rupe, and City Engineer Shane Nelson. We have two other council members that are out of the state right now, Councilmember Mary Rainville and Councilmember Linda Blake. They'll be watching this on YouTube with all the other people that couldn't be here tonight. But we're all available for comments after this. Feel free to get a hold of us personally. If you have questions tonight, this is a good start. We will have a couple of public hearings tonight and one more. No decisions will be made tonight. We're gathering information. So Shane will give a quick presentation on the project. Bob's here to answer any legal questions, and obviously when we get to that point, we ask you to step to the podium, give your name and address, and speak freely. Shane?
All right, thank you. I'll move through this quickly. So we're talking about the road project of Ebony and Garnett. So it's showing the project area shown in the red here. So just a little bit of background. Nowland owns and maintains 34 miles of paved road, 29 miles of gravel. So we have 63 miles of road roughly. The project area we're talking about tonight is 4,390 feet, or 0.8 of a mile. So out of 63 miles of road to maintain, this is just under 1 mile of those. Reason that's relevant is because there's not enough money fully levied to fully pay for reconstruction and other major improvement projects. We also have to use our money that's levied to take care of our other road improvement needs. What the city has tentatively identified this as a 2020 road improvement project, depending on what we do tonight. So looking through records, the road was originally constructed in 1992, about 28 years. I realize there's been a lot of work since then. There was a project in the late 90s, and then several repairs just recently. But the road's in pretty tough shape, at least the parts that haven't been patched yet. So just a little bit about pavement. So when pavement is first constructed, it looks like this. You can see it's a smooth surface. The surface is black. Can't see any of the rock or the sand. But pavement is, or bituminous is a mixture of rock, sand, and oil. You think of the rock as a structure, it's what carries the loads. The sand is kind of the filler between the rocks, and then the oil is kind of like the glue that holds it all together. So over time, what happens just due to weathering is you see the surface turns gray. We no longer have that black color. That means that we've lost that oil or that bituminous from the surface, from usually the upper layer. We also see that we've lost a lot of that sand, the filler material, from the surface, and we've started to expose these rocks. So as the smaller rocks start to be removed from the pavement, that exposes these larger rocks, and once those rocks get about half to the halfway point, then we start losing our larger aggregate also. Pavement also cracks over time. Normally cracking is normal, it's expected. Pavement has to crack to relieve the stress. But what we're worried about is when the pavement looks like this. So this probably started out as a block crack, and then that lets water into the aggregate base. The aggregate base gets soft, and when the load goes over the pavement deflects, which causes it to crack. So this is just kind of a depiction of the bituminous pavement. That crack acts as a conduit for water to get into the aggregate base. When any material becomes supersaturated, it becomes unstable. So when you have a load applied over it, that pavement deflects, and after it deflects so many times, it eventually cracks. In the wintertime, we also have the opposite thing happen here. So you have a warm day, you have some melting going on, that the water runs into a crack, gets in the crack, it gets cold again at night. When water freezes, it increases by volume by 9%, so that pushes up on the pavement. And if you ever drive someplace where the road's really rough in the winter, usually that's the cracks that have tinted up in the winter because of the water that's underneath. So in Minnesota, the state collects a gas tax, so every time you fill up with gas at the pump, a portion of that price you pay at the pump goes to the state gas tax. Most of that money is used for highway improvements, but there's also several $1 million that goes to research and development. So MnDOT has studied pavement deterioration extensively in Minnesota. And what they've determined is that when a road is first new, it stays in relatively good condition for the first several years. And then once it starts to deteriorate, it deteriorates fairly rapidly. So they determined that the first 40% drop in quality, it will take 75% of the pavement life for that to occur. So let's say you have a pavement that's designed to last 20 years. That means that first 40% happens in 15 years, which is a pretty long amount of time. And the interesting part is the next 40% drop in quality happens over 12% of the pavement's life. So that next 40% happens over just a couple of years. So these are just kind of some average cost per mile of different types of treatments. And really what we're talking about tonight is the reconstruction of the surface, maybe some structural improvements. We're going to go that a little bit more as we go. But what we're proposing with this project is to reclaim the existing bituminous, and this would be kind of north of the big patch. Shape the base, pave new bituminous, 3.5 inches thick, match the driveways, reestablish the gravel shoulder. And we're aware that there's, I actually just was out on this road a couple weeks ago looking at possible soil-borne locations, and even that patch, that large patch on the north end, there's some settlement there. So if we move forward, we'll be asking for some geotechnical or some soil borings there. And if things change, the scope of the project may change slightly. And overall, the drainage is assumed to be adequate. There are things that could be done to improve the drainage on the roads, but that would also involve a lot more money, replacing all the culverts and whatnot. And right now, this project does not include that. So this is a picture of a reclaiming machine. This machine has already made a pass in this direction. I got to the end of the road, now it's turning around and driving this direction. You can see this is the pavement that the pavement or the reclaimer is reclaiming. So the good thing about this process is it actually adds strength. When, let's say you have 3 inches of pavement and 8 inches of aggregate base underneath that pavement, this reclaims that all together. And now we have 11 inches of aggregate base. So just by doing this process, we've already increased our base by 3 inches. Then we come behind this, we shape that base, we compact it with the roller, and then we pave the bituminous mat. So generally how we do projects is we pave the bituminous in 2 lifts. This first lift is called the bituminous base course. It has a little bit bigger rock in it, helps carry the loads a little bit. After the base course is paved, we'll determine where we need to cut driveways for a good matching point. The contractor will cut those driveways, so there's a nice vertical face to match those. And then this paver will actually pull into the road. Kind of a messy process. You're dealing with hot asphalt, sometimes it leaves little clumps. That's why we don't do the wear course right away. But after all the driveways are pulled, it's usually a couple weeks later, and they come through with the second lift, which is called the wear course, and that gives us a nice finished product, and the driveways are all done at that point, so there's nothing to mess up the road. So, again, our typical pavement deterioration curve, and what we're proposing is to start with a new pavement surface, and then with regular maintenance, hope to extend that pavement life out much further than the typical deterioration curve. So this is kind of what the proposed typical section looks like. Right now, the pavement is 24 feet wide. We propose to reconstruct it at that same width. There'd be a 1 foot gravel shoulder, and then if necessary, we would shoulder that gravel down the inslope with topsoil. Well, the engineer's estimate for this project is $296,000. Again, this is just an estimate. We haven't received bids or anything yet. Once we do receive bids, we invite you all back in at a later date. So this map just kind of shows, it's the same map we looked at earlier, but what I want to call attention to now are the properties that are outlined in yellow. So the properties that are outlined in yellow are the properties that we've looked at and determined they directly access and benefit from this project, so they receive 1 assessment. So there are 20 benefiting properties. The city is proposing to pay 50% of the project cost, which results in an assessment of $7,400 per unit. So if this project goes forward and the work were to be completed this year, you'd have the chance to pay your assessment in full by like November 1st or November 15th, whatever the deadline is. That would be of this year. If you do that, it does not get certified to your taxes. However, if you choose to do nothing, the assessment will be certified to your taxes, and the first installment will be payable with your 2021 spring tax payment. So that's normally like in April or May of 2021. So there are several steps left if we're going to complete this project this year. We're here tonight at the public improvement hearing. We also are looking at doing some geotechnical work to better understand the in-place soil conditions. Assuming the city council could approve plans and specs sometime in March, that means we would start advertising for bids at that point. Probably open bids sometime in April. After we have opened the bids, we actually have contractor prices on this project, and we'd invite everybody back in. And at that time, we would tell you what your proposed assessment amount is. Again, these are just estimates now based on previous projects. Construction would start probably right around June, could start around June. Generally, we tell a contractor, in a project like this, we probably tell them you have somewhere between 6 to 8 weeks to complete it. And we would allow them to complete it any time between the window that we give them. If we find that we get better prices if they're somewhat flexible. But normally we try to have projects complete by like August 30th or whatever that last Friday is, just so projects are done before school starts. Oops. So we always are asked, what are the alternatives? Can we wait a couple years? If we wait a couple years, you know, we'll just see more potholes likely. We would expect that any repair that would be completed in the future would be more expensive. And then it's always kind of unknown whether or not the city would have the ability to fund a project in the future or. So with that, that's my presentation. I raced through it as fast as I could. Turn it over to the city attorney for a few words.
No, just to echo what Shane said, this is the first of 2 formal public hearings. This is called the improvement hearing. This is for you to ask questions after you've heard about the project and also to give feedback to the council. For those of you who kind of witnessed it at the last public hearing, this is your opportunity to be heard. If the council decides to proceed and this gets put out for bid, then we'll actually have formal numbers, hard numbers, not estimates like tonight. And then you will get another formal notice of another public hearing called the assessment hearing. And that number you receive will actually tell you the amount proposed to be assessed. It may be different than what you hear here tonight. And then you'll have an opportunity again to come in and be heard. And then the only time we can't put the brakes on this project is after that assessment hearing. If the council awards the contract, that's the point of no return. Anything before then, the council has the ability to put the brakes on. Mr. Mayor?
So This particular project is more challenging than some of the others we've done in the city. The type of road that was put in back in the early 90s has not held up well. We are very aware. I was going through my emails this week, and I've got quite a stack, and I just put in Ebony and Garnett in there. I've got 10 years worth of emails that have gone back and forth on different project issues related to this. We are aware that back in the township days when the development first went in, those people that were living in the development got charged for when the road first went in. Subsequent to that, about 10 years later, 2003, there was a repair and patch job that was assessed at about $975 a unit. Subsequent to that, we had repairs in 2010, 2015, and 2016, approximately $150,000 worth that the city has put in addition that wasn't assessed. We have asked our engineer to conduct additional geotechnical investigation on all the projects we're proposing right now. This one in particular, you guys live there, you know it's an old pasture, the old cow pasture. There's a lot of springs there. There's some county ditches that aren't maintained well. So we have water issues. So we want to make sure that whatever we do, that the patches that are there, if those are effective patches and can be incorporated into this, that's factored into this cost. If those patches aren't good enough and have to be replaced, that would change the cost. We also know that bituminous, being primarily oil, is going to be affected by oil prices. If something goes kaflooey between now and April, certainly we're going to see a higher estimate. We also don't know what contractors are going to do. Last year was an interesting year because contractors are having trouble finding laborers. And so it's being a more competitive market. More competitive means generally higher prices. We're giving it our best estimate as we're going forward here. We're also not willing to push ahead if those prices get out of hand, or if we find something in the geotechnical work that we still have to do that changes this significantly. Again, as the attorney has said here, we have the ability to put the brakes on this should we need to until we actually let the bid. So there will be another opportunity to weigh in. We're going to be continuing to do research to make sure we have the best solution and the best cost. That being said, you've waded through the tail end of a previous hearing. You sat through a presentation. This is your chance to voice your opinion here. Looks like we've got probably not quite half the homes represented in the neighborhood here, but I think we got good representation. If the neighbors that couldn't make it here tonight will be on YouTube, and the council is available for additional questions before we obviously make decisions. So if anybody would like to share at this point, again, please step to the podium, give your name and address, and then we'll have our discussions.
Paul Rickard, 18711 Garnett Street. You guys have obviously heard from me before on this project. Shane, I got a question for you. On the 2 years back on the road improvement plan, this road was scheduled, or your suggestion back then was for a total reconstruct. Why backpedal, or not backpedal, but why change now? Because I think if you look at the road now and based on the patches the city has done over the years and how much those have settled, this isn't the fix. So how do we go from doing it, in your opinion, going from a total reconstruct down to just an overlay?
Well, the total reconstruct was before the city did the $150,000 patch or whatever that is. And, so that involved replacing all the culverts, replacing, doing a total reconstruct. It'd be a major project that would probably last all summer. That might still be the answer. We don't have geotechnical data back yet. We prepared this feasibility report under the assumption that the patches that we've done in the past have held up. I saw one, it's probably only the northern 50 feet, but one of them has settled. And so, you know, this is maybe an opportunity or a proposal to make the project more affordable. I think when we studied this, I did a estimate and we had everybody in probably 10 years ago. And at that time, it was, you know, a pretty major project also, but, it really depends on the subgrade. If the subgrade, if we do some geotechnical work, and if the subgrade is relatively dry and it's, you know, hard, I guess is a good word, but they do a test, where they drop a hammer with a specified weight, and they record how many tests or how many drops that takes to drop a foot. And end value of say 10 is really good, it's gonna do well, and if we have an end value of say 3, it means it's a really soft subgrade, and what we're proposing probably will not work.
Yeah, because, you know, I guess most of the people can probably tell you here, and they probably will, where pretty much all the patches the city have done over the years are still settling. You know, so there's not enough aggregate underneath, and, you know, in your presentation, you claim that with what should be there, with the reclaim, you're gonna end up with 13 inches. You're not gonna end up with because that's not what you have now. So, in my opinion is, if the city goes ahead with this project, you're not just wasting our money, you're wasting the city's money. Because this isn't gonna fix the problem, and we're gonna be back here in 10 years again. You know, and I don't think anybody wants that. You know, I've been in I've lived there now since that road was originally gravel, so from day one. So, you know, and I brought it to your attention before, and or the council's attention before. This would be the third time some of these residents have been assessed for road improvements. And there's no other residents in the city who can say that. And that's just kind of a tough pill to swallow. You know, and not just that, as you look at this assessment, the total assessment value that you're proposing for these residents is more than in any individual on Old Viking, and you look at the distance between Old Viking and this. You know, so I'm not opposed to paying something for, you know, a road improvement that will actually fix the issue. But at this rate, it's, you know, to me, it's just appalling that, you know, a handful of people are in a small little short section are gonna pay more than what all the residents on Old Viking had to pay for, you know, miles of road. You know, and I understand, you know, the city's assessment policy has changed over the years where now it's got to be a 50%, but that's not cast in stone either. The city has the flexibility to adjust that however they want, depending on the project. So if this does go forward, I'd like the city to at least look at that and look at, you know, the past and what, you know, residents have already paid, you know, over the years for road improvements. The other thing is appraisals. The way the state statute is written, this improvement has to equal the amount of your property value increase. And you can't tell me that my property value is gonna go up $7,500 because now I'm getting a freshly asphalt road compared to being on an asphalt road now. Has the city looked at all at actually looking at the true impact of doing this project on home values rather than going ahead thinking of doing this, going ahead and doing it, and then we have all the opportunity to appeal that, and if we win that appeal, then the city's on the hook for all that money. Because I guarantee I'll do that. Because I don't believe my home value will go up $7,500 because of this improvement.
Well, you know, Paul, we've talked about this, and it's been kind of, so the two assessments, and looking back, we were talking about this with the people up on 189th and 190th, because the road went in at the same time. 93 was when it was blacktop. So when you built out there, it was gravel. And the township didn't require the developer to put in the blacktop immediately. And so they were saying because it went in after, their homes were older, but the road went in and the blacktop came in, they were assessed at that time in 93 also. But part of the problem is the developer came in and developed on gravel. And then they decided to blacktop with probably not, well, we know they didn't have the road standards back then when you're putting in that road in a cow pasture. But because you guys had already built and they hadn't they hadn't required the developer to put that in, that's your original assessment, right? At 4,400, 4,500.
The original assessment was for when Garnett or not, but when 185th and Jasper went in. So
Okay.
we got assessed for that when that went in.
For Jasper and 185th.
Correct.
So that's the 4,500, because back then it was 100%.
Correct.
And so that all happened at the same time in 93. So that's when 190th and 189th and Ebony and Garnett and Jasper and 185th all went in. And the township back then was assessing 100%. So that one was the original. And then that repair project in 2003, 10 years later, was another $975. So those are the two that you're talking about previously.
Correct, but part of the problem with that, though, too, is the fact that when that road originally was put in, the township would never adopt it as a township road because they didn't say it was to their standards, regardless that there was no standards actually written. So that first 10 years, there was zero maintenance done to that road. And the developer was allowed to take all his escrow funds out of that account after that 10 years without having to do any improvements. And then as soon as that 10-year lapsed and he took his money out of that escrow account, then the township came after all us residents, well, now we gotta fix the road.
Okay.
You know, so the problem was never addressed when there was some funds available back in the day. And it was never
And
built.
I just want to say for the record, we've learned our lesson, and we do have road standards now.
Yeah, well, and I
Developers don't
understand
get to walk away with the money.
But like I said before, I still don't think that this proposal now is gonna fix the issue. And I think if we go ahead with it, the way it's proposed, I'm gonna be back here in 10 years arguing with you guys, or whoever is sitting up here at the time.
Well, and that's why, I was saying that we're not to a point where we have to proceed, and that's why we've asked for additional geotechnical. Because I've been here for, since we've been a city, all the repairs we've done, the patches that are there, if they're settling, we know the water issues we've had in the past. So I know what the city's done in the past 10 years. I want to make sure that whatever we do holds up. And so if this isn't the right solution, I don't want to push ahead and just spend this kind of money for 10 years worth of effort. So we are intent on continuing to investigate that part of it. And thus the purpose of this meeting to say, what do you guys think? You guys live on it, you guys drive, you've been driving it all these years. Give us the feedback. We're not locked in stone.
Yeah, and I understand that, and, with what we've gone through over the years and what the city has done and what we've, contributed to fixing, I don't know if and they can speak for themselves, but I don't know if any one of the residents here have been in complaining that we need to refix this road, we need to do this. I think most of us have been happy with the patches that have been going on, to address some of the issues. But I do understand that the Garnett Ebony section has been on the road improvement plan for years and years. And that's why I say, it's been there for years. We've done a few patches here and there, and, they're getting us by. And then to see, again, a $7,500 proposed assessment per resident, again, which is more than Old Viking, is a tough pill to swallow.
And obviously you understand Old Viking because there were 65 or so.
I understand that, but you look at the amount of road there, and that's why I say, I know the city's current policy is a 50%, but there's nothing set in stone on that 50% match.
You're right, it could be less. It could be less either way. Back when the township was doing 100%, I think that we take a look at what is necessary to do that road, and we take a look at those costs. Obviously, Old Viking the whole project was significantly higher than this, and while they didn't pay the $7,400, they were in the 6,000s, they were about 69, I think it was, 6,900, but there were 65 homes on that as well, so, but I want to make sure that whatever we do is a long-term solution. And if we find out the long-term solution significantly increases this, then we have to decide where we're going with that. And there are options. There are options to keep patching. There are options to, as you say, change the equation if that's what the council chooses to do. We're not gonna cram something down somebody's throat just to get it done either.
Yeah, like I said originally, was
There was a question, so what we chose to do last year on Ebony, there was a patch that's been giving us problems. Each of the neighborhoods we're proposing this year had similar patches. So we opened them up last year and instructed Joe to do the base work and leave it, let it settle and see how it came out. If we decided not to go through with the road project this year, we will go back in and patch that section that we turned to gravel last year. There's another alligator part just north of you. You know, we would, you know, if it makes sense at this point to continue the patches that we're doing and they're sufficient, that would be another option we would consider.
Yeah, because like I was telling Sheen too, you look at the corner of where Ebony comes out onto Garnett, that's settling, and there's a, you know, just to the west of there, that's settled, you know, there's a pretty good dip in there, so I don't see that changing. And again, I believe the current proposal is you're throwing our money away along with the cities.
Well, again, that's the purpose of this hearing, so thank you. We're definitely not intending to throw anybody's money away. Anybody else?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bryan?
did want to make a comment that when we did look at Old Viking originally, a couple years ago, we did it, we were getting close, we went out for specs, and then the specs came back and went, no, what you want to do is the solution that you need to do is not what you're estimating, and it would cost a lot more to do. So we did pull that one back, because when we got all the studies back, it was, this is gonna, to do it the right way, it's gonna cost a lot more than we originally planned, so.
Well, part of the reason we put that on hold too is because of the asphalt or the fire up in Duluth and asphalt costs shot through the roof.
At the refinery,
That's what that was for.
Well, that was part of it, but the other part was we also changed what we did with the road. You know, we're just gonna mill and overlay, and we reclaimed and did a more significant project. Because once we started talking with contractors, they said, in essence, what you're saying here, a short-term fix is not what you're looking for on a major road like that. And so the asphalt prices were up, but it also was not the long-term solution. We believe what we quoted last year was a 20-plus year solution. But that has, we changed the specs on it, and we got a better asphalt price.
Hi, my name's Joel Gustafson, and I live at 18563 Ebony, right in the corner there of Ebony and 185th. And I don't know, members of my family walk and bicycle and even sometimes rollerblade along these roads that are going to be fixed. And they said it's a little bit rough for rollerblading, but this road isn't any worse than any of the roads around here. And they're drivable. About the only people that could complain about the driving, I think, are the people that like to drive 50 around those curves and speed through there. Maybe they'd have a complaint, but everybody else seems to think everything's fine. So this is unnecessary. That's the way it is in my household anyway.
2010 and 2011, the situation was so much different back then because we were getting complaints from school bus drivers, people driving fire trucks, our plow drivers. That was not a usable road. And I think the patches, the fact that they've held up relatively well for 10 years,
so.
with some settling, it was to the point where people were bouncing out of their seats or giving us trouble plowing. So I agree that we're in better shape than we were, and obviously we'll take that into consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else?
My name is Mark Palm. I'm on 18793 Garnett Street. I wouldn't even know where to begin with all the questions and answers, or not answers, but questions for that road. Mr. Mayor, you had made the statement of going back to the original creation of that road in early 93, I think, might have been 92. When the road was put in, they did kind of a real quick development of the ground. I can't even say a road. And I guess where I'm going with this is that underneath that asphalt, even the original asphalt, that I remember, and I welcome anybody to say if I remember it incorrectly, it's pretty much farm dirt under there, under all too many sections of the road. So to say to mill up the top 2 feet of that road with the present asphalt, it's just turning up farm dirt. I don't remember hardly any actual gravel at the time, class 5 or such, being put down. So to grind up or even tear out that asphalt that's there, from what I remember, you're pretty much standing on farm dirt. Jerry Bauer developed the kind of road surface and then into the ditches, everything just blended together. There was no definition of what looked like gravel as opposed to farm dirt. So, and then to go back at something else that was said about doing like soil borings. I noticed that it might have been Joe that had come in just, spray painted the circles on the road where the borings would be done. I don't remember how many years ago, but that was done, I'll just throw out maybe 10, 12 years ago. They did the same thing. And I remember being said that they had gone down like 8 feet and it was pretty much just mud. So at any point to take out even all of the asphalt, to grind up the road, it wouldn't even be a gravel road, it would be a true dirt road. Just the questions are just, to say that nothing would be done with the road, or maybe, I'm sorry, I'll rephrase, to look at all the different options for even this upcoming year, a total reconstruct, it seems like a total reconstruct of that road would end up having to dig it down so many feet that would be so cost prohibitive. And yet to overlay it at this point with any asphalt without doing some substantial underground work, water drainage, that road, in my opinion, is in really bad condition, except for the sections that were kind of redone 3, 4, 5 years ago. They seem to have held up at least relatively well because they excavated out that top, foot or so and backfilled it with gravel. So at least it seems to hold up. But then there's all the rest of the sections of the road that are original. So underneath that asphalt, you have all the dirt. So didn't really have a question per se.
I think that's the patches we've done. We've taken out a fair amount of soil, put in gravel, put in the fabric.
Yeah.
And like I said, it appears it was a cow pasture. It appears, and we had developers back in the day in other parts of town that took the ditch dirt and mixed it in and didn't bring in class 5. And so we've had other roads that aren't as heavily traveled, but have, some of them have gone back to gravel. We actually put in gravel, so they're now gravel roads. But that is one of the things that in investigating this, and we may, to get it right, miss our window this year for this road.
Yeah, I'm sorry, say again.
We may miss our window this year for this road, but we got to get it right.
Well,
And that's why we've asked for additional geotechnical, because we need to know if we're doing something start to finish on these 2 roads, that it's going to be effective. And if that means it's a total rebuild, then we go back to the drawing board and price differently.
Well, and that's I was going to kind of ask, because I sat through your prior meeting for the 190th in Dolomite, or whatever the neighborhood to the north of us. I guess it brings up another question to say that if the city moved forward in any warm season to do roads, depending on the contractor, and like you had said, there's a kind of a labor shortage, or was, I guess my interest or concern could even be if at any point, it was to move forward with the Garnet Ebony, as in it's like either grind it up or tear out that asphalt in the prospect of, redoing something. Well, if that couldn't even be finished in the common summer warm season, to tear it all out, and then it sits through another winter, the way it is, that dirt underneath, there'd be so many frost heaves and heaves and sagging. It would be, like talking about a road that's impassable, that road would become impassable. The mud would take over so badly that, to try and make it through a full year's season would be, an immense amount of work, to leave it in a decent enough condition to drive on. So,
Yeah, and we haven't had that discussion, in previous years on other roads, we talked about if there was a total reclaim, the possibility of bringing in the right base, the gravel, and letting that settle for a season, and then in the beginning of the next season, bringing in the blacktop. But again, that's something that, way beyond what we're talking about here at this point, that would be similar to coming into a new development, taking a farm field and putting in a real road. So that's something we'd have to talk with engineering and saying, if we got to that point, what would it take, and how much time would be necessary to do that? Right now, we haven't had the proposal given to us. I'm waiting to see what the geotechnical says, and then make a decision, is this the right way to go?
it is a road in a unique way and not in a good way, meaning that from day one when the road was kind of, I use it so loosely to say that the road was developed and put in, it's just been a year after year, now decade after decade failure, and a big topic, a continuous topic. I guess I would have to agree kind of to what Paul was saying, that to put just about any kind of money on a cost-effective project right now, it just doesn't seem, other than doing something considerably more extensive, it's just not gonna hold up. It's gonna be revisited again in a short time, probably before a 10-year, proposed assessment could even be paid for. Then there'd be another project on top of that. It's a tough one. So, thank you.
Yeah, this is the one that has given us the most challenge so far, so. We don't take it lightly. I mean, it's, and that's, one of the things when we became a city, that's one of the first things we did is get our road standards in place. Because when you had people, when there was a development heyday out here, there was a lot of this going on. It was easy to come in. It's unfortunate that the developer was given the period of time when money was in escrow, that something could have been done, and then get his money back and leave the township in a lurch like that. And, we learned from those things. When we became a city, the first thing we did was take a look at the agreements with our contractors, especially as it comes to roads and building roads to standards, making sure we're applying the knowledge. That being said, we're saddled with a number of neighborhoods where I think it's particular here because you've got 20 nice homes in a large area there, which is really pasture land. There's a lot of water in that area, and that complicates things. So by not having the proper road put in and the base that's there, makes this more challenging than some. Some of the other places were established gravel roads before they were blacktopped over, so it's not quite the same challenge. So we're aware of it.
And I was gonna say that same thing when you were discussing that 190th and Dolomite, prior to I'll say those homes date back maybe 70s or so, I don't know. But that road has actually been there as a road long before it was ever asphalted, where the one that we live on, it pretty much went from a farm to a haphazard road bed to asphalt, just boom, boom, boom.
Yep.
Yeah. Mark, maybe you can help me with my memory, because it's pretty bad. Now, Jerry Bauer, when he first put that asphalt road through there, it was not long after we all kind of moved in and built in there, and it kind of came apart. It was just garbage. And the late Don Benson, who was my next door neighbor, told him, he said, you can't put a road through wetland like this really is unless you put packed sand down there. Then you're class 5 on top of that, And Bauer made, I didn't see eye to eye with too much with Jerry Bauer, but he made a good faith effort. They went and they tore up that road, and then they put a lot of packed sand down there. I don't know how many truckfuls of sand they packed down there. And then they put class 5 on top, but then the surface. And I don't remember, was that a few years afterwards, 5 years afterwards? You know, it was, yeah, it was, my memory was.
Well, my understanding is, as we've done the patching, that sand has been a big part of that, the class 5 and also the fabric.
Well, that patching, I think has worked well, but
It's held up extremely well. Like I say, there's some settling at this point, but considering how bad that was back in 2010 when we first did that first patch, I think it's held up pretty well. And again, it will be, the council can have that discussion with the engineering staff. You know, is it something that until there's a complete redo on that road, maybe we go back and we had said, if we don't do that road this summer, the area on Ebony that we fixed last year, and it's gravel right now, we will at least be patching that. And then we'll be discussing the area just north of the patch, the alligator up just near your place, Mark. So we'll be doing something there this year. Is it gonna be something equivalent of what we've done in the past? While we figure out what to do long-term, a lot of that will depend on what the geotechnical.
One after what year we had last year, it'll be interesting to see this spring when the frost goes out, and you get a bus or a garbage truck or just anything of substantial weight. All it takes is just one drive-through, and it's, you know, sinks right into the mud, pushes everything back up.
You guys still have garbage trucks in that neighborhood?
Do we what?
You still have garbage trucks in that neighborhood?
We just dump it down on the south end of the.
We're encouraging everybody who's got a neighborhood that, where they talk to their neighborhoods. You know, the city will not go to a single hauler. If you guys can encourage your neighbors to sign up with a hauler, see if you can get a price and a commitment out of a hauler. Certainly, the fewer garbage trucks that are on there, we can't regulate that, but the fewer garbage trucks on there, the better for whatever we do in the long run here. But that's something that the neighbors will have to get together and coordinate.
It is safe to say, though, that it's gonna be a much nearer than further out, that I don't know what constitutes just an utter, complete failure of the road, but that one isn't far from it, at least some sections of it. There's some areas on there that are just so poor.
You know, without a base, we're fortunate it's not worse than it is. Anybody else?
You're reiterating what these guys say. You don't wanna put money to waste, that's foolishness, you know? It's a big pill to swallow the way it is.
We understand.
I will ask this, that if the city does choose to do some type of, I guess we'd call it spot repairs, not just like throwing shovelfuls of asphalt, if you could consider doing something maybe earlier in the summer as opposed to like September?
Yes.
It just always, the reason I say this, and I don't mean to, maybe if I'm being disruptive, I don't mean to, even like just the shovelfuls of asphalt, always seems like that the holes get filled in October. We all drive it through the whole summer months, and I know it probably isn't the reality, but it's like smoothing the road just a little bit in preparation for winter. Well, we all care about the summer months, not so much as the winter months. I guess the snow and the ice will fill those holes themselves. So if there's the prospect of doing something earlier in the year as opposed to later would be super.
All right. And if this project, for whatever reason, doesn't go ahead at this point, certainly the patching that we've committed to will be done, I would assume, earlier in the year. But it's a good point that if we're out looking at the end of the busy season for what's going to cause problems for the plowing, we should be sensitive to what the residents are doing year-round, so.
Thank you.
Anything else? Again, all the council members' numbers are available. We're in the newsletter. If you have a question, you can call us. Take text, emails, voicemails. Call me direct. My cell number's available from the city here. If you have anything else that comes up or any neighbors that didn't get a chance to come in and want to voice their opinion or concerns, feel free to call us and contact us. We'll be evaluating, again, with the engineer. We'll be completing our discussion here on how we're going to do a reasonable geotechnical evaluation of the complete neighborhood so that we know whatever we do, whatever we propose makes sense. And if it needs to be bigger than this, then we go back to the drawing board. But we are not locked in at this point. So. If there's nothing else, like I said, feel free to call us. I appreciate your patience getting through the other ones, waiting for that, and coming out on a cold night to share with us. And if something else comes up, let us know. And then we'll be communicating officially, as we move forward. But we would definitely not be doing anything else without another public hearing. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.